So I've been getting a lot of questions about my DWM setup and dmenu. Here's dmenu and how I set them up to be this way. Because of that, I'm going to be making this video sort of as a guide on how to customize, Suckless software just like how I did. So hopefully you guys can get a setup like this too if you want. Okay, so I'm on the suckless.org website, and here you can see all the different programs they have. So starting off with DWM. DWM is Suckless's window manager, and DWM is a little bit different compared to other window managers because it doesn't have a config or like RC file like other window managers. You actually have to edit the source code if you want to make any changes to it. Now, that might sound pretty complicated, but it's actually a lot simpler because, Suckless makes it very easy to like modify and change the code. They make it very like understandable, which is kind of like the beauty of Suckless software. So I've just spun up a virtual machine with Arch installed on it, and I recommend you guys use Arch or some kind of Arch-based distro if you want to follow along, but you can really install Suckless stuff on any distro, but I'm going with Arch. Okay, so to get started, you'll probably want a few packages just, that are pretty handy. So install git and vim. So we'll need git to clone Suckless stuff, and then vim to like edit. So just install that. So this shouldn't take too long. There we go. So then after that, you want to git clone. So now we have git installed, we can clone DWM. So do git.suckless.org/DWM. .clone DWM. So just wait for that to finish. Okay, so DWM has just been cloned, but besides just cloning it, we need to install a few more packages. So this is a pretty minimal install, so we need to set up Zorg as well, or xorg. So do sudo pacman-s, and you're going to want xorg server, xorg xinit, xorg xrandir. So xrandir is for resizing the window, and then also you might want xf86 input -lib input. So this is just some input stuff, and this is a lot of packages, so again I'm probably going to cut ahead to once this is done. Alright, so xorg has been installed, and earlier we cloned DWM, so DWM is in here, and we can just cd into it, and you can see all these files in here. So if you try to compile it with sudo make clean install, it's not going to work. You'll see we're missing xfce, which is like a font rendering library, I'm pretty sure. So to get all the packages you need to compile DWM, you want to install libx11, libxft, and then libxinirama. So x11 is x11 stuff, xft is like font stuff, and then xinirama is for multi-monitor support. So just press enter and it'll install pretty quick. I don't think I need to cut here. Yeah, here we go. And then you can run sudo make clean install. So this command will actually just compile it. And if you actually vim here and look at the make file, so this is what clean does here, and then install is this, and yeah, basically that's what we just did. So now DWM is an actual command, but we need to set up xorg for it to start working. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create a xinitrc file. So do touch.xinitrc, and then let's edit it with vim. So you just want to do exec dwm, right? Because earlier we have dwm as an actual command. You can see in /user/local/bin, then you can grep dwm. So there's dwm in there, and then so now that we've edited our xinitrc to do that, we can just type in start. We can type in start x. So yeah, sometimes there's an error like that. No fonts could be loaded, so just install a font. I'm going to use JetBrains Mono, TTF JetBrains Mono. There we go. So you need to have a font installed if you don't have one already, but that's not a big deal. So start X, and here we go. This is DWM, and you'll notice it's a little bit small and stuff like that, but we'll fix that next. Okay, so once you're in DWM and you want to quit, you can do Alt-Shift-Q, which quits DWM and brings you back to this TTY. And one thing you should know is how DWM is structured. So CD back into DWM, and we'll just vim. So first of all, there's a config.h file and a config.def.h. So which config.def.h kind of acts as a config file as well. So you can see the stuff in it. It kind of looks like a config file, but it's all just code. So it's not like, you know, some other type of config. And config.def.h is basically, this is the file that patches will modify usually. So you want to remember that. And then dwm.c, this is where the bulk of the code is. So all this stuff here is like most of the code pretty much. You can see it's pretty long, but that's just a bit overview. So the first thing you want to do is edit the config.h file. So we're going to change a few things. Like here, here's a few things. So on this part, the mod key, it says mod1 mask, which means alt as your mod key, your modifier key. But if you want to change it to super, you can change it to mod, ignore that error, mod4 mask. But I'm going to keep it as mod1 mask. So super is mod 4, alt is just mod 1, which is the default. And then here's another thing we should change, which is the terminal command. By default, it's set to st, and I'm not gonna lie, st is actually a pretty bad terminal emulator because you need to add all these patches onto it, and you know, so I've been using Kitty for now, and Kitty it works pretty well because st, from what I know, its ligature support wasn't amazing. Like there was a patch to get ligatures, and it didn't work with different colored text, and also the glyph rendering and undercurl stuff patches weren't very good. And also you also needed to get a patch just to scroll around, and like a patch to basically resize the window properly or have it take up the full space. But anyways, that was kind of a tangent. And then here is the keys part. So this part is all basically the keys. So you can see here the terminal command is mod, so alt shift and then enter. I'm gonna get rid of this shift, so then it's just enter, right? There we go. And then also another thing is like to close a window, it's shift C, so mod shift C. I like it just being mod C. I don't like having the shift key, so you can just edit it like that, right? And then let's also change the color, for example. So here you'll see that the scheme selected color is cyan, so that's the color of cyan, which is basically the accent color in DWM. You can change it to be like, let's go with this. So, or let's go with purple. I think this should be the hex code for purple. And then, oh, you need to add a exclamation mark to be able to write it. Now type sudo make clean install. So this will install a new version of it, and it does require root access. So, or not exit, sorry, cd. And then we can write start x again. And there we go, we changed the color, and look at all this stuff. Actually, we did not install the terminal emulator like I said we would. So quit it again with super, or not super, alt shift q. And then let's install Kitty. Or actually, I changed my mind. I'm gonna install Alacrity. So let's change the config again. Oops, cd dwm. So here in this config, let's search for kitty and replace it with alacrity. So yeah, let's compile it again, because kitty for some reason is not really working in a virtual machine sometimes. I don't know. But yeah, anyways, let's install alacrity instead. Here we go, start X. And then if we press Alt Enter, we get an actual terminal. And let's do a quick fast fetch. So you can see our window manager is dwm, and we have all of this stuff here. So next up, I'm going to show you some other stuff about patching. Okay, so you guys might notice this window might not be the right size, or at least not for me, because I'm in a virtual machine. So it's displaying the wrong resolution. So if it's happening to you too, you just need to edit your xinit.rc file, and before the exec dwm line, add this command. So xrandr is the program we installed earlier, which allows you to control the monitor resolution or whatever. So -- output, and then the name of your so the name of your display. So mine is called virtual1, and so yeah, just go here and do xrandr -- output virtual1 for me. For you guys, it might be called like dp1 or something like that, display1, but you can find out. And then mode, you want to say the resolution, so I want 1920 by 180. And then scale, so if you want to scale it up, I'm going to keep it the regular 1:1 scale. And then position, this is for if you have multiple monitors, I want to move the position a certain amount of pixels away. -- rate, so this is the refresh rate, I'm going to keep it 75. And then primary just means this is going to be the primary monitor. And then you can quit. And if you want to quit xorg, you can do pkill x, which will kill the x process, and then you can just start up x again. Now look, we have dwm, and it's taking up the full screen. What's the word? There we go. So now we have 1920 by 180. Alright, so next up, I would recommend you guys install a browser. So I'm going to install Firefox, just so that you can actually search stuff online and, kind of search up how to do something. I think most of you guys can take it from there. So install a browser is a pretty important thing. This is a pretty big package, so I'll cut back to here once it's done. Alright, so I've just installed Firefox as a browser, and you can launch Firefox by just typing it in the command line and then pressing enter. But the problem with that is if you do Control-C, it ends Firefox, or if you run it and then let's say you close the terminal with Alt-C, then Firefox also dies. So we want to install dmenu as well. So if you go back into dwm, vim, and you open up the config.h, vim config.h, here there's a dmenu run command, so you'll also need dmenu installed. And to get that is not too bad. So just like how we cloned dwm, we also want to clone dmenu. So git clone https git.suckless.org/dmenu, and this will just create a new directory called dmenu with all the dmenu code, and I'm going to cut back to when it's done cloning. Alright, so dmenu is done, so we can cd into dmenu, and you'll see its structure is pretty similar to dwm because it has a config.h and config.def.h. Well, yeah. So config.def.h, if there's no config.h, then it's going to clone over config.def.h. But anyways, all we want to do is run sudo make clean install. So this will just install dmenu, compile and install dmenu. And then if you cd out and cd into dwm, then you'll see that in here, the dmenu command gets run when you press mod key P. So most people like to have it as mod key and then R for like if you've used Rofi before or something. And R is just easier to press than P in my opinion. And also, whenever you make changes to DWM, you need to compile it like this, and then you need to restart it. So P kill X, and then start X again. Now, if you press Alt P, well, actually, it's not happening. So CD dmenu, mod key and R. There we go. I don't know what happened earlier. So now you can just launch things at the top. You can see the top of my bar has dmenu when I press super R, and I can type in Firefox or like Alacrity or any program. So Firefox, and boom, we just got Firefox set up. And you guys might have seen my build of dmenu where I have it in the center, because when it's in the center it's a lot easier to see. You don't need to focus your eyes up back to the top. You can just keep looking in the center of your screen, and it also like flows down instead of across. But you can patch dmenu later. So if you want to patch anything, go to Suckless, or you can search up like DWM patches or dmenu patches, and Suckless will have a page on their website basically with all the patches here, and you can just search for the one you want. And it's also the same for dmenu patches. So dmenu patches is like here's all the patches. There's like the center patch, which is the one I used, and some other patches as well, like grid puts in like a little grid. Centers the dmenu in the middle of your screen. But yeah, so that's how you set up dmenu and DWM basically. So you have a app launcher and your window manager set up. Okay, you guys, so I just spent some time changing up the config a little bit. Well, not really, I just changed the color, but I also added my like Alacrity and my NeoVim config, so just to make things a little bit easier when editing. So one thing you'll probably notice is if you want to move windows, you can't. I'm holding super and left click and it's just turned into a floating window, which is not what I want. So the easiest patch to be able to move windows around, because for some reason there isn't any way to do that by default, is the move stack patch. So I'm on the DWM patches page on suckless.org, and somewhere here there's a move stack patch right here. So patches are basically like it's like a .diff file, and this will basically tell you what changes you need to make. And you don't actually need to manually do this usually, because there's a patch command, which I'll show you in a moment. But here, let's go back to DWM. One thing I want to make clear is a lot of the patches, they're going to modify config.def.h, because config.h is actually just, I have NeoVim installed. So config.def.h is the original file, and also ignore all these errors, they don't matter, it still compiles fine. But config.def.h is the original file, and if you delete config.h, it's going to clone config.def.h. But I recommend, or at least what I do, is I like to keep them the same. So if I modify config.h, I'm going to copy everything, and I'm going to basically, I don't have a clipboard. Let me see. Can I install xclip real quick? Okay, so whoops, config.h. So I like to copy my entire config.h file, and then I like to go into config.def.h, and then I'm gonna paste it here. So here I keep everything pasted there, and yeah, so there we go. Actually, I have a formatter set up. Hang on, you guys. So config.def.h. Okay. Clang format, I think, is off. So now it shouldn't format. At least I hope not. And then let's go here. Okay, it doesn't format now. And then, hang on you guys, let me just fix this. I don't know what happened here. There we go. So let me copy this. So basically the point is I like to keep my config.h and config.def.h the same, but no config.def.h is going to be the file that patches usually modify, like pretty much all of them. And here the move stack patch, what you want to do to install this patch, basically, so this patch allows you to move windows with super shift J, or no, sorry, mod shift J and mod shift K. Because by default, DWM, you can use Alt J and K to move around windows, move your focus, but it doesn't actually move them, you see. Like if I type something here, these windows don't move, you can see. And then, so yeah, this one just adds a patch so that when you press shift along with it, it moves the window around, which is probably like the most useful patch to get started off with. So I'm just going to show you how to add a patch, and after you figure out this, you can probably figure out how to add other patches. But basically you just need to copy this link and make sure config.h and config.def.h are the same, and cd, or actually make dir patches. So I like to have a directory with all my patches in it, and then cd into that. And then you want to do curl-o, so this will use the same name of the file. And then this will just download it into here. You can see if you ls. And then here you want to run the patch command, and then point it to that patch's dwm move stack patch. So that'll do that. And you'll see it actually failed. So it patched movestack.c, but it failed patching something to config.def.h. So what you can do is you can do vim and config.def.h.reg. It says like what line it's on and like what thing it needs. So it needs to add this line, so you can copy this and then go to config.def.h, right? So config.def.h, and then go to where it should be, so like right about here, and just paste that in and get rid of this x as well. And then you want to copy config.def.h into config.h, or you can also just delete config.h, because if you look at the make file here, it's going to copy the config.h to config.def.h. So sudo make clean install cd, okay, and then pkillx. So you need to restart dwm every time, and then start x. So now if I do super this, and let's type in fast fetch, and then if I press alt shift J and shift K, it moves up and down the stack. So that's pretty much how you add patches. And if you want to add other patches, it's pretty much the same process. At least that's what I do every time. So so you just put your patches in this folder and you run a patch command, and the more and more patches you have, sometimes you'll actually need to manually fix them, but it's really just copy and pasting lines of code, so not that bad. And then you can also patch programs like DWM to be centered, and also all the other Suckless stuff have patches as well. And another thing I would recommend is if you go to github.com or anywhere, I would recommend you store your build of DWM like in a repository somewhere, so that you don't need to patch it every time you use it. So here I have this little area where I patch all my Suckless stuff. Like here's DWM, here's my other build of DWM blocks, SL status, dmenu, st, slock. So that just makes it really convenient, because you could just clone it from your repository and then install it. So you don't need to compile it every time. And that's what most people do, is they just have their own fork of DWM. But yeah, that'll probably be it for this video. Let me know what you guys want to see next. And yeah.